Here's some psychology you didn't ask for. Your brain's favorite hobby isn't actually thinking, it's assuming. Like when you see somebody blink weird in your direction, and then your inner narrator says, "Oh, well, they must hate me. Their dog hates me. Hell, even their ancestors probably hate me." Relax there, Sherlock Holmes. They just had an eyelash in their eye. Welcome to the Shift Show. Welcome back to the Shift Show. All of you overanalyzing bundles of brilliance. If you're new here, my name is Adam Blevins, and this is the corner of the internet where we use science, comedy, sarcasm, and probably too much caffeine to remind you that your thoughts, well, they're not facts. They're just stories that your anxiety wrote without an editor. If you've been here before, you already know what it is, right? We laughed first and we learned something by accident later. Today's episode is going to be a lot of fun, and this one's called Get Out of Their Head. And yes, you heard that correctly, because half of us are living in other people's brains, like it's a timeshare that we never canceled. So today, we're going to unpack why we do that, and why it's making everybody miserable. And before you say, "Adam, I don't do that," yes, you do. You sure do. I do it. You do it. Your preacher does it. Your doctor does it. We all do it. We've all done it. Somebody doesn't text us back for a few hours, and suddenly we're constructing a full-blown crime scene in our head with our relationship with this person. Oh my God, they're mad at me. I said something wrong. I bet they're talking to someone else. I bet they're probably talking about me and what an awful, terrible person I am. When in reality, their phone's actually dead and they're watching The Office for the 73rd time while eating a bowl of Cinnamon Toast Crunch out of a salad bowl. The human brain is a pattern-detecting machine with the emotional stability of a toddler who's had 3 cups of extra dark roast coffee. It absolutely hates the unknown. So when it doesn't have real information, it just makes crap up. This is called confabulation. Yes, it is a real word. Look it up. Which basically means that your brain fills in the blanks with whatever story makes it feel the safest, even if it's wrong. Now, everyone likes to believe that we can snap our little brain fingers and know the answer to everything and to know all about everyone. But every time you assume someone else's motive, your brain rewards you with a tiny little hit of dopamine, that's a feel-good hormone, because it thinks it's solved a mystery. It makes you feel smart. It makes you feel like you're in control. You're not. You're just high on fake certainty. It's a brain-built conspiracy theory with you playing the hero, playing the victim, and you're the unreliable narrator all at the same time. Your brain loves this game because it is also allergic to uncertainty. It would rather invent a dumpster fire explanation for something rather than admit that it doesn't have the answer to a question. That is called cognitive closure. That is a psychological term that basically means I need an answer right now. Right now. Answer right now, in my hand right now. Even if it's stupid, even if it's illogical, even if it is completely irrational. And we're all addicted to it. You may think you're seeking and sharing truth with the world, but you're probably just soothing your nervous system. Because to your brain, certainty equals safety. And again, even if it's the wrong answer still feels less dangerous than the unknown, because the unknown is scary. Your your brain thinks it's walked into a dark room and closed the door behind it when you walked in, having absolutely no idea what threats are lurking and hiding in the shadows. This is why you can't just chill out when someone says, "We need to talk." Because that statement alone is the emotional equivalent of being handed a live grenade after somebody's already pulled the pin. Your brain, it immediately starts producing a slideshow of every single mistake that you have ever made. You're already rehearsing your apology before they even text you back saying, "Well, it's nothing bad." We confuse anxiety for intuition all the time. That gut feeling that you swear is never wrong. Most of the time, dear friends, that's not divine insight. Most of the time, that's heartburn and unresolved childhood trauma sharing an Uber in your chest. Our intuition, man, it can be brilliant sometimes. It can keep us alive. But when it's mixed with fear and caffeine, it's about as reliable as your uncle's Facebook research degree. But it's also not entirely your fault, because you see, your brain has evolved to keep you alive, not to keep you all chill and collected all the time. Because back when saber-toothed tigers were just running amok, assuming danger kept you from becoming lunch meat. Fast forward a few thousand years. Sorry, the smoke from this incense just scared the shit out of me. We fast forward a few thousand years, and that same survival wiring in your brain, it's still firing off, just as it was back then. Only now, the tiger is your boss's tone in an email. Or when your spouse says, "Well, I just think it's funny how." So congratulations. You, just like me and just like everyone else, are biologically designed to overreact to punctuation. Here's the sciencey bit behind it, but in decently plain English. Your amygdala, which is that little almond-shaped panic button in your brain that we've talked about the last couple episodes at this point, I think, it cannot tell the difference between what is a real threat and what it perceives to be a threat. So when your friend takes too long to respond to you, your body reacts like it's being hunted by a pack of wolves. Your heart races. Your muscles, they tense up. Your palms get sweaty and your brain goes, "Well, I guess we die now." Meanwhile, your prefrontal cortex, which is that logical part of your brain that's trying to calm you down, supposed to calm you down, it's trying to get a word in edgewise, like that one sober friend who's trying to break up a bar fight. But it's too late when you get to that point, because your emotions have already pressed the big red button. That's why you can know that you're overreacting to something and still feel like you're in danger. Biology's a douchebag sometimes. And because your brain can't stand that mismatch between I'm safe and I feel like I'm dying, it starts looking for proof to justify the panic that it feels. That's when you start detective scrolling, right? That's when you start rereading your text messages. That's when you start replaying entire conversations, overanalyzing somebody's tone. You're not searching for the answers that you think you are. You are hunting down emotional receipts that match the anxiety that you feel inside of your body. That is called confirmation bias. That's when your brain cherry picks whatever evidence agrees with the story that it already believes, even if the story is complete nonsense. That's why arguments get so weird, because you stop listening to understand and you start listening to win. You twist every word into a weapon until the other person looks guilty for something that they didn't even actually say. So again, congratulations. You've become a courtroom drama that's written, directed, and narrated by your fight or flight response. And the worst part is, you don't even feel like you're going crazy. You just feel certain about whatever it is. Certainty is one of the most addictive feelings in the human experience, because it tricks your nervous system into thinking that it's safe. It's emotional nicotine, if you will. It's soothing for a second, but it can be destructive in the long term, which is why learning to tolerate this little saying, "I don't know yet," is one of the best mental health skills that nobody ever taught us how to do, and most people don't even know how to do. Because let's just think about that phrase for a second. I don't know yet. That might as well be foreign language to our little human egos, because we treat uncertainty like it's contagious. Think about it. Someone says, "I'm not sure," and half the room breaks out in hives, because not knowing something, well, that makes us feel powerless. And powerlessness, well, that makes us feel unsafe. And the irony is that we're already powerless. Half the time, we just prefer the illusion that we aren't. Our brain is addicted to stories that make us feel like we are in control. That's why people would rather assume that you're mad at them than to admit you might just be busy living your own life. Control is comforting, even if it's delusional. We don't actually want truth. We want relief. We want the version of reality that makes our nervous system exhale instead of holding its breath like it's become accustomed to. It's also why gossip and drama, they feel so good and so emotionally yummy in our little tiny brains. It's not always malicious. Sometimes it is collective anxiety regulation, if you will. We get together, we swap our little assumptions like they're baseball cards, and boom, we have instant connection through shared certainty. It's tribal storytelling disguised as a casual conversation. We build a temporary sense of belonging by all agreeing on the same made-up bullcrap. Not convinced yet? Okay. How about this? You ever been in a group text where someone says, "Did you hear what happened?" Instantly, everyone's typing like their little thumbs are on fire. There's 10 of the little 3-dot things going crazy where somebody's typing. Nobody even knows the details yet. But suddenly, everyone's heart rate syncs up like we all connected to the emotional Wi-Fi at the exact same time. And the story doesn't even have to be true. It just has to make sense to all of us together. It's a modern campfire. Only instead of roasting marshmallows, most of the time we're roasting people. And that's a big problem because we've mistaken knowing about people for knowing people. You understand what I'm saying? You can memorize someone's favorite color, their Starbucks order, their childhood trauma, and still not have a clue who that person actually is. Because knowing facts doesn't equal connection. That's data collection. And we've turned relationships into FBI-like files in our little brain. We scroll through someone's social media feed like we're CSI analysts searching for emotional evidence. "Oh, she liked that guy's photo from 2018. I'll bet she's cheating on her husband." Or maybe she just double-tapped the screen by accident while stalking the guy's cat. Or he might be her distant cousin. Who knows? But we assume. Right? We assume what we assume anyways. Psychologists call that the illusion of transparency, or the false belief that we can read people's internal status just by looking at them. Once, for 5 seconds. Spoiler alert, you can't. Half the people that you think are mad at you, they just have resting biatch face, and the other half they're probably just constipated, if we're being honest, but we get stuck in our little heads. We assume that we are all experts on human behavior because we've watched Criminal Minds and had one bad relationship. But your ex lying to you doesn't mean that you're suddenly a lie detector, okay? It just means that you may have dated a jerk. But that's what happens when hurt people start moonlighting as mind readers. We start to mistake pattern recognition for psychic ability sometimes. But the truth is, your brain's not analyzing people, okay? It's protecting you from pain. You can be as uncomfortable with that as you want. Every assumption that you make about somebody else, is really your nervous system running a preemptive safety check, if you will. Well, let's just assume that they'll disappoint me now, so it doesn't hurt as bad later when they actually do. It's a cute idea, but it's a terrible strategy. Because when you think about it, you can't outguess heartbreak. You just experience it twice, once in real life and once in your imagination. Listen back to that if you need to. This is what therapists call projection. You're not actually seeing people for who they are. You're seeing them through the dirty windshield of your own unresolved crap. If someone ghosts you, you decide it's because you're an unlovable person, not because they're currently emotionally unavailable and allergic to their own accountability. If your coworker's quiet, you think it's because you said something wrong, not because they're silently fighting the urge to quit their job for the 4th time this week. Right? We take everything personally because the brain's first language is self-reference. It filters the entire world through you and your eyes, and it's exhausting. You end up carrying a mental guest list around full of people who didn't RSVP to your anxiety. You can't enjoy silence because you assume it's judgment. You can't handle neutrality because you mistake it for rejection. And God forbid someone is actually upset with you because your brain throws a parade. See? Ha! I told you. I knew it. Told you so. Validation, baby. Here's the science behind that mental misery. Social rejection activates the exact same part of your brain as physical pain does. Literally. MRI studies show that being excluded from something or being criticized for something lights up the anterior cingulate cortex, which is the same region of your brain that reacts when you stub your toe or if you burn your tongue. It's the same thing. That's why "they didn't invite me" can hurt just as much as I stepped on a Lego. Your nervous system, it doesn't know the difference between the two. But rather than feeling that pain, we try to outthink it. We try to rationalize with it. We overanalyze it. And we catastrophize things until we've turned emotional paper cuts into psychological bullet wounds. And then we walk around wondering why we're bleeding from every assumption that we've ever made. And it's not just in relationships. Hell, we do it with strangers. The person who cuts you off in traffic, they're not a demon. I have to tell myself that every day. They're not a demon. They might just have diarrhea. The cashier who didn't smile at you isn't judging your groceries. They've just been standing for 7 hours wondering why humans invented currency. Everyone's fighting their own invisible war behind their eyes. But our egos just love to make it about us. Because if it's about us, we get to feel important, even in our own suffering. But again, we don't want truth. We want narrative. And the more emotional we are, the more dramatic that narrative becomes. You're not just tired, you're failing at life. Your friend didn't forget to text you back. Oh, they've outgrown you. The human brain can turn a mild inconvenience into a Greek tragedy before your morning coffee gets cold. And the worst part of it is, we don't even realize we're doing it because it feels real. The emotional brain doesn't run fact checks. It runs vibe checks. And once the vibes are off, logic doesn't stand a chance. Your prefrontal cortex might as well be in the background. That's why you can have a full-blown argument with somebody entirely inside your head. You're shampooing your head in the shower, living your best imaginary life, and suddenly you're yelling, "Oh yeah? Oh yeah, well maybe you're the problem, Karen." Again, sorry, Karen, so I got something against y'all these last 2 weeks. Congratulations. You've just had a fight with a person who's not even in the room. That mental rehearsal of conflict, it's called anticipatory anxiety. Your brain's trying to prepare you for a threat that may or may not even exist. It's a self-defense mechanism that refuses to take a day off. Instead of protecting you, it traps you in an endless dress rehearsal for conversations that never actually happen. And when we live in that state long enough, our nervous system starts treating imagination like evidence. The more time you spend visualizing people's motives, the more your brain believes it's actually experienced those motives. So even if the person didn't actually wrong you, your body still stores the tension like they did. You're walking around carrying resentment towards people who have no idea they even participated in the emotional Olympics that you hosted in your own head. That's why forgiveness is so confusing, right? Sometimes there's no one to forgive, just your own overactive imagination. You created the crime in your head, you investigated it, you prosecuted it, and you sentenced yourself to emotional jail. You're the whole justice system of your own emotional nonsense. But to be fair, we come by it honestly. From a neuroscience perspective, the brain's job is to predict outcomes. Okay? That is a survival algorithm designed to run scenarios so you can avoid pain. But the problem with that is that mechanism doesn't know the difference between emotional pain and physical danger. So when your boss sends that text message that says, "Hey, can you stop by the office?" your brain reacts like a velociraptor is waiting behind the desk. The prediction center in your brain freaks out. It floods your system with cortisol. And the next thing you know, you're sweating through your shirt, wondering if you should fake your own death. Just quit your job, move on at this point. Your brain also has something called theory of mind, which is the ability to imagine what other people are thinking. Sound familiar? That's great when you're trying to empathize with people, but it's catastrophic when you mix it with insecurity. Instead of using it to connect, we weaponize it. We weaponize it to catastrophize everything around us and the people around us instead. Oh, they didn't smile back at me. They must think I'm annoying or ugly. They didn't compliment my haircut. I must be disgusting. They laughed too hard at someone else's joke. I'm not funny. Or they might just be tired. They might be distracted. And or they might be trying to remember if they left the stove on at home or not. The brain loves to fill silence with stories. And those stories tend to star you as the problem, because that's safer than believing that people just might not be thinking about you at all. The truth is, you are the main character in your story. You're an unpaid extra in everybody else's. You're worried about how you looked when you tripped in Walmart. Meanwhile, everyone else is just trying to remember why they came down that aisle in the first place. We need to collectively stop renting mental space in other people's heads. The property value is terrible, and the neighbors are wildly anxious. But this habit doesn't just mess with our heads, okay? It screws up our relationships. When you start assuming that you know what people are thinking, you stop giving them a chance to actually tell you what they're thinking. You start responding to the story in your own head instead of the person in front of you. Suddenly, you're mad at them for a version of reality that they don't even know exists. You're arguing with a hologram while the real person is just standing there like, what the hell just happened? That's what assumption does. It replaces curiosity with certainty. And curiosity is the lifeblood of connection. Without it, every relationship slowly turns into a cold case file full of unresolved emotional crimes. Well, why didn't you just ask me? Because our egos would rather be right than real. We've all had those moments where someone finally says, "That's not what I meant at all when I said that." And then it's like your brain short circuits. What do you mean that's not what you meant? Well, that's what I thought you meant. At that point, you've spent days spiraling, crying, overanalyzing, and running full-scale psychological forensics on something that wasn't even true. And then they just shrug and say, oh no, I was just busy. That's it. Case closed. Meanwhile, you've already lost 3 nights of sleep and a perfectly good relationship with your own peace. Let's get clinical again. Your brain loves emotional patterns, even if they're toxic. That's called predictive coding. It means that your brain will take previous experiences and use them to predict new ones. Like, well, the last time someone was quiet, they were mad at me. So this situation where someone's quiet, well, it must mean the same thing. The mind clings to patterns because predictability makes us feel safe, and that makes us feel in control. But in reality, you're not predicting anything. You're recycling old things. You're reliving the same emotional trauma on a loop and calling it intuition. Every time we do that, we strip away one of the most human things about us, which is context. People are not math formulas. You can't plug in delayed response and get "they hate me" as an output. Life doesn't work like that. Context is everything. If someone's short with you, maybe they are stressed. If they cancel plans, maybe they are overwhelmed. If they forget your birthday, maybe they're dealing with life, not trying to ruin yours. But because we've become conditioned to view everything through the lens of rejection, we confuse neutrality with hostility. We assume every single silence, well, it must have a hidden insult behind it. And that assumption becomes self-fulfilling. The more you assume people are against you, the more defensive you become, the more defensive you act. And all of a sudden, well, they start pulling away. Not because they hate you, but because they're tired of being punished for crimes they didn't commit. If you want to fix 80% of your relationship anxiety, practice clarification. Ask instead of assuming. Hey, I noticed you've been quiet lately. Is everything okay? Or am I just overthinking things again? 9 times out of 10, they'll either tell you the truth or they'll at least say something that stops your brain from building a weird narrative out of it. And if they don't clarify, well, that's data too. It's not data about your worth. It's data about their communication skills. Now, when you get the data, your job isn't to decode that person's soul, okay? It's to decide what you will do next with that data, not what they should do next with that data. That's the difference between a boundary and a screenplay, okay? Also, here's a quick calibration trick that'll save you a lot of fights, okay? Separate what you saw, what they said, and the story that you told yourself about it. Does that make sense? You saw they didn't reply. They said nothing. Your internal story was, they don't care at all. You see the distinction? Those are 3 different things, but people get punished for the third one all the time. Here's where it happens at your job. Your coworker, they only write K on a big proposal idea of yours, and suddenly you're updating your frickin' resume. You're ready to leave because somebody didn't validate you the way that you thought you should be in that moment because you were reading cues that weren't there. Just breathe. Ask for clarity like a normal, intelligent mammal. Do you like the idea or not? Do you have any ideas that you could add to it to make it better? Boom! 90% of office angst is solved without a single team-building exercise. And for all the fixers in the back of the room, yes, you, the emotional EMTs out there sprinting towards every frown with an empathy stretcher. Take this from me, and if any of you know me, this is going to make a lot of sense. A lot of helping is anxiety trying to control the environment. You don't actually have to treat other people's discomfort like a kitchen fire. Sometimes silence needs to be awkward. Let them finish loading. If they want input, they'll ask for it. If they don't, you just saved yourself a gallon of emotional gasoline. So here's a quick field test for everybody else. When you catch yourself narrating someone else's motives, ask a question. What did you mean by that? Or, are we okay? Pick your favorite human sentence and just try it. If anything else, it'll get you out of your head and you'll get an answer, right? If they do answer, now you got reality. If they dodge your question, you still got reality. You still got information. If they get weirdly offended by whatever it is that you ask them, that's also information. Either way, your nervous system can stand down now because now you're dealing with information. You're dealing with some facts instead of fan fiction that you wrote in your head all day. Does that make sense? Because remember, your brain, it's going to pitch you a wildly entertaining story because stories reduce stress. It's not malicious on your brain's part. It's a protective mechanism that it has learned and formulated over the years to keep you safe. Thank it for its service. And then go verify what you need to. Verifying things, it keeps us from vilifying people. Now, let's talk about your body for a second. Because your body is the DJ behind the booth that's spinning up all the chaos. When your heart rate spikes, your tolerance for uncertainty drops through the floor. That's why in the moment everything feels personal, right? Think about this. When you're hungry, everything feels personal, right? When you're exhausted, when you're overstimulated, you're not actually more psychic at midnight. You're just fresh out of serotonin and dignity at that point. Eat real food. Sleep like you mean it. Move your body enough that your stress hormones have somewhere to go, besides the group chat where everyone pisses each other off every 5 seconds. Also, give people the dignity of newness. That sounds weird, doesn't it? But if you think about it, if you've already decided who someone is, they'll never get to surprise you. And if you never let people surprise you, you're not in a relationship. You're in a rerun. Fresh data informs relationships. Let it. And here's a tiny, almost disrespectfully simple script for the next time your brain drafts a 10-page assumption about any given situation. Say this to yourself. I noticed blank. Okay? And I'm telling myself blank. Then ask yourself if any of that is actually true. That single line can end more imaginary wars in your head than your therapist can, because you're giving your logical brain a chance to enter the conversation that your emotional brain has been pushing it out of. Now let's zoom out a little bit. Let's zoom out of our own heads and look at the societal impact of everyone else living in everyone else's head all the time. Have you noticed how half of modern society is just one big group chat of people assuming what everyone else meant when they said or did something? It's like humanity collectively logged onto Twitter, all at the same time, read one sentence, took that sentence out of context, and said, yes, I will now form my entire personality around my interpretation of this internet stranger's tone. We've turned I think into I know. We've turned I feel into I fact-checked. And maybe, we've turned that into definitely. And the world is losing its damn mind because of it. Let's start with the big one right now. I know we did politics last episode, but let's talk about it for just a second. Political polarization is basically a group project, if you will. And all of our limbic systems, that's the emotional caveman part of your brain, they're the students. Everyone's just hurling assumptions at everybody else, like dodgeballs in a middle school gym. Does that make sense? You don't even have to read a bill anymore. You just have to see who proposed it. If that side proposed it, I ain't even going to look at it because I know I ain't going to like it. The minute someone says a word like tax or gun or immigration, Half the country covers their ears, and the other half starts Googling, how the hell do I become a citizen anywhere else in the world? Why does this happen? Because we've stopped debating ideas and we've started psychoanalyzing motives. If you say you support renewable energy, boom, somebody automatically assumes that you hate cheeseburgers and drive a Prius that runs on rainbow piss. If you say you support law enforcement, well, suddenly you're assumed to have a shrine of bald eagles and wear the Confederate flag to church. Nobody's asking anymore. Nobody's having conversations anymore. They just assume whoever it is that they're looking at and assume that they know everything about them. That's the societal cost of assumption. It replaces curiosity with the caricatures that our brain draws of the person who just took our lunch order. And it's hilarious in the worst possible way when you think about it, because we used to argue about policy. Now it's like we're all just arguing personality disorders at this point. Hey, did you hear what Senator so-and-so said? Well, no, but I already hate it. Just hearing the person's name, I already hate what I don't know that they said. I don't even know if they said anything. I just know what you've told me. The way we make assumptions about everyone and everything, it's like we're constantly playing fantasy football in our head, but about everyone we see instead of about actual football. Some people see a MAGA hat and assume the person wearing it stands outside of a Popeyes, just screaming racial slurs on the weekends, while others will see a gay guy with a blue mohawk and assume that they whisper transgender thoughts into the ears of our children. Notice anything similar between the two? I'll leave that there. How about religion? I know that some of y'all just love when we talk about religion on this show, but religion is the original assumption factory. Yes, he said it. It's okay. You don't have to rewind. Humans have been assuming God's tone of voice for thousands of years. Half of theology is basically, well, God probably meant this over here. While the other half is going, no, he didn't. No, he didn't. And you're going to hell for thinking that way. Religious assumption is wild because it turns personal belief into spectator sport. We forget that spirituality is supposed to be about growth. It's supposed to be about connection and about mystery. Not a Yelp review of everyone else's soul, Diane. Sorry, Diane's. See, I just did it. Did you see that? I just did it. I just assumed, ladies and gentlemen, that women named Diane would be exactly the type of person that I'm describing. I only know like 2 Dianes. And all I really know about them is that their name is Diane. You see how simple we are? Back to religion, Diane. Diane. You can't even say, I'm spiritual, but not really religious. Because someone is going to immediately assume that you burn sage and talk to crystal witches. Or if you say that you're Christian, and people automatically assume that you hate gay people and you catch on fire when anybody says a cuss word. And you think that Jesus drives a lifted Ford F-250. Speaking of cuss words, that's a good example. How many people judge the entire life of somebody else because they said a bad word we didn't like? Think about how silly that is. Let's do a social science experiment. Listen to this. Damn. It took me about 0.4 seconds to say that word, and some of you judged me for it. You said, oh, gasp. He said a naughty, and I don't like it. That 1/4 of a second that we just shared together caused your brain to search every experience you've ever had with bad words and people, and thus forming a mental conclusion that I might be a bad person. I could be scum of the earth. Jesus will smite me. I have hate in my heart. I am sin. I've determined who this person is based on 0.4 seconds. But I have news. There's 34 years behind it that you didn't see. You have no idea what a kind-hearted steward of the human soul that I am, and damn, that hurts me. Meanwhile, Jesus is somewhere going, I said love thy neighbor, not audit their vocabulary or their pronouns. See how ridiculous it gets? And as I so eloquently demonstrated earlier with the Diane situation, we all do it. All of us. An assumption turns faith into faction. It replaces empathy with a moral resume. And it's funny because if there's a God, I bet he's watching us like a parent who left their toddlers alone with finger paint. Just sitting there going, I gave them 10 rules. 10. And they turned it into 50,000 denominations and a merchandise line. Now we're all silently clenching, right, because of how comfortable this episode just got. So let's make it even more uncomfortable, shall we? Let's discuss sexual orientation and pronouns. Oh, yes. Yes, you feel your chest getting tight yet? Are your shoulders touching your ears currently? No? Give it a minute. If you want a front row seat to see how allergic human brains are to uncertainty, watch people panic when someone corrects a pronoun. You'd think they were being asked to perform algebra while skydiving. It's not really that big a deal in the grand scheme of things, right? But assumption makes it personal on both sides. The brain hears they, them, and goes, oh my God, no, identity crisis detected. What do we do? Because pronouns, they mess with our lazy filing system in our brain. Our brains love labels because labels, well, they reduce ambiguity. And ambiguity makes your amygdala start humming the Jaws theme song. Speaking of Jaws, I should have worn my Jaws Hawaiian shirt for this episode and didn't. So instead of saying, well, thank you for the clarification, we just assume they think we're stupid. You got folks yelling, what's next? We have to introduce ourselves as human beings? Yes, Carl. That's kind of the point. Sorry, Carls. Now, what about the anti-pronoun community? Oh, fantastic. Feel the blood pressure. Feel it rise. Feel it rise. That community cannot stand the thought of saying they, them, but demands to be called sir at the dinner table. That's interesting, isn't it? They can't imagine the possibility of gender fluidity, but is in perfect agreement with spiritual fluidity. That is interesting, is it not? We stop seeing humans and start seeing headlines, right? Oh, gay? Well, they must have an agenda. Straight? Must be repressed. Non-binary? Well, they must be confused or crazy. Meanwhile, everyone's just trying to survive traffic and buy toilet paper before inflation gets worse. Calm down. If people could step out of each other's heads for 5 minutes, half the world would realize no one's plotting the downfall of civilization. They're just ordering DoorDash and trying to afford being alive. Now, let's rewind to the pandemic, the greatest social psychology experiment none of us got the informed consent paperwork to sign for. Remember those first few months of COVID? Toilet paper shortages, and about 4 million armchair epidemiologists arguing in the comment sections over words that they've never seen before in their life. It was the golden age of assumption. Here's how we know this. If you wore a mask, people assumed you were a dumb government slave. If you didn't wear a mask, people assumed you wanted to personally unalive their grandma. Every cough was a felony. Every trip to Target was an ethical dilemma. Assumption turned science into superstition. We didn't follow data. We followed dopamine. The more sensational the headline was to our eyes, the safer our brains felt. Because confusion, that's scarier than contagion in our little brains. So we built tribes of certainty on either side of the topic. The internet became a digital Salem, if you will. But instead of witches, we burned nuance. And look, we were scared. On both sides, on any side, we were scared. Our nervous systems were running Windows 95 during a thunderstorm. Y'all remember how that went. But instead of admitting we were terrified, we acted certain. Certain. I'm right, you're wrong, period. Because certainty, again, that feels like safety, even when it's a bowl full of stupid. And that's the thing. Assumption is anxiety in a costume. Okay, it's fear in a lab coat. And if anxiety is the virus, well, social media, that's the petri dish. We've built entire platforms around reading half a sentence and deciding everyone's entire moral worth based on that one sentence. One tweet, one TikTok reel, one slightly sarcastic caption, and boom, trial by comments. You can't even post a picture of your dog without somebody assuming it's a metaphor for capitalism. Wow, nice golden retriever. It must be nice to have privilege. Ma'am, it's a dog. Algorithms reward outrage because outrage, it equals engagement. So your brain, it gets that sweet little dopamine cookie every time you destroy someone online. Nobody's listening. Everyone's performing. And humility has been replaced with hashtags. And yes, there will be hashtags on this video. One of them will be humility. The result of this is a population that is emotionally constipated but intellectually overhydrated. Does that make sense? We know everything, but we understand nothing. Let's go deeper. How about race? That should get us uncomfortable, right? We assume that we can understand someone's entire lived experience based on melanin. We confuse awareness with understanding. Cultural assumption is sneaky because it hides behind good intentions. People say, well, I don't see color. Well, that sounds great. Sounds nice. But it actually translates to, I'm uncomfortable acknowledging complexity. Assumption erases nuance. It tells us that someone's entire story can be summarized by a demographic checkbox. But you can't Google empathy and automatically have it. Sometimes you have to sit in the discomfort of not knowing. And that's terrifying. And that's also what actual connection looks like. Awkward, curious, a little slow sometimes, but human nonetheless. But we don't have patience for that. We've got 60-second reels and a collective attention span that's shorter than a gnat on Adderall. Speaking of gnats, y'all remember Reggie? I think I seen his cousin flying around here a minute ago. You'll be happy to know Reggie's services, they were beautiful. Anyways, let's talk about relationship assumptions. Assumptions has destroyed romantic communication. Dating apps have turned connection into a forensic investigation. People are zooming in on profile pictures like they're trying to find the true meaning of Christmas in somebody's jawline. Is that a wedding ring in the reflection in the window? Oh, I knew it. They're married. Is that a cat? Is that a doorframe plant? Oh, they must be a feminist. We text stalk each other, overanalyze punctuation, and interpret. We even interpret emojis like they're coded CIA messages. If you send hey with no emojis or no exclamation point, you cold-hearted Jezebel. Add a period to it, now it's aggressive. If you had a heart to it, well, now you're being love-bombed. Add nothing to it, now it's ghosting. And now that person is going to think that you forgot they're alive when they actually texted you in the middle of a back-arching poop, and you just forgot to text them back. If you're not uncomfortable yet, you found your place. We're no longer dating humans. We're dating our own insecurities. Half of modern heartbreak is self-inflicted fiction. Here's what I mean. Here's the comedy behind this. Your brain doesn't care about truth. It cares about closure. Okay? That's why feeling ghosted hurts so badly, because you don't get that narrative completion when you've been ghosted. Your brain's like, wait a minute, the season ended without a finale? A cliffhanger? I'll realistically die if I don't discover the ending of this story that has consumed my existence in this moment. So we fill in the blanks. And we fill in the blanks with whatever hurts the least, or whatever makes us feel powerful in that moment. Oh, they must be intimidated by me. Sure, Brad. Sorry, Brads. Or maybe they're just tired of your attitude. Oh, sorry. I just did it again. Sorry, Brads. See? Assumption. We've even industrialized assumption. Because if you think about it, assumption is literally profitable. You can make money off of assumption. Outrage clicks pay better than calm conversation. Cable news and social media, they both figured out that a long time ago. They both figured out that nuance doesn't sell deodorant. So we're constantly being fed emotional junk food, hot takes, half-truths, and psychologically processed cheese. Okay? The scarier or angrier the content, the more your nervous system perks up like a meerkat. Your amygdala, it goes, ooh, danger, must keep scrolling. You're not consuming information like many of you think that you are. You're self-regulating, and then you call it staying informed. But what we're really doing is we're feeding our fight or flight responder. We scroll for the same reason that toddlers shake their toys. It makes the noise predictable. And then we wonder why everybody's miserable. Because, again, back to neuroscience. From a neuroscience standpoint, here's what's happening. We've collectively overloaded our prediction machines in our brains. Your brain's main job is to reduce uncertainty. Remember? Well, in a world where you can watch 10 conflicting opinions in 60 seconds, the brain short circuits. So it picks a team. It picks a side. Not because it's right, but because it's simpler. That's why misinformation spreads faster than facts, because it's emotionally digestible. It gives your nervous system a sense of completion, because truth, well, that takes too long, and our nervous systems are exhausted. They're not patient. We're all walking around like overstimulated toddlers in the world's loudest Chuck E. Cheese, begging for someone to just turn the damn lights off. So again, we assume, because assuming is faster than feeling. So what happens if we don't stop doing this? If we keep living in each other's heads, society becomes a funhouse mirror maze of projection. Everyone's reflecting everyone else's fear, and no one's looking for the exit. Politically, that means that compromise dies. Religiously, it means that compassion erodes. Socially, it means that trust collapses. Emotionally, it means empathy flatlines. You can't build community when everyone's building conflicting narratives all day. If we don't stop, we'll keep mistaking noise for truth. We'll keep mistaking drama for depth, and we'll keep mistaking opinion for identity. We will raise an entire generation of people who are more fluent in outrage than in understanding, even though we've already done that a couple of times up to this point. But just imagine for a second, if we all just actually paused for a moment, if we let curiosity back in, if we stopped assuming intent and started asking for context. Picture this. Social media comments replaced with, hey, can you explain what you meant by that? Politics, where people say, boy, that sure is an interesting point. Tell me more. Relationships, where the first instinct isn't to accuse somebody, but to clarify what the situation is. It sounds like utopia, but it's just emotional regulation with manners. If people stopped assuming and started verifying, the collective blood pressure of this planet would drop faster than gas prices before the next election. Religion could go back to being about faith instead of fear and hate. Politics could go back to policy instead of personality cults. Gender could go back to being a frickin' conversation instead of a courtroom. And the internet, dare we dream, could go back to cat videos and recipe fails instead of civil wars in the comment sections. When we stop narrating each other's motives, empathy sneaks back in like a stray dog looking for the french fries that you dropped on the floor. We start seeing humans again instead of just the headlines. Because that's what assumption really steals: humanity. Think about it. Why do some people think that all cops are bad? Why do some people assume that all black people are criminals? That all atheists are evil? That all conservatives are racist? That all liberals are snowflakes? Because we assume things based on what our brain thinks it already knows. Because we can't stand the idea of thinking a little deeper and exploring the messy, complicated, sometimes wrong, often beautiful humanity that makes life interesting. And let's be honest, it'd be pretty hilarious too. Because once you step back and really look at us, half the bullcrap we fight about is ridiculous. People have unfriended relatives over a virus they couldn't see. Marriages have ended over Facebook memes. Friendships have imploded over a misread tone in a text message that autocorrect probably wrote. We've been playing emotional telephone at a global scale, and the message at the end of the line is just everybody needs to calm the hell down. We need to learn to laugh together again. Speaking of laughter, nothing diffuses assumption faster than laughter. When you can laugh at how ridiculous your brain is, it loses some of its power over you. That's the real magic behind self-awareness. It's not solemn. It's stupidly funny. You ever catch yourself mid-spiral and go, my God, I'm literally arguing with an imaginary person in my living room right now? Well, when you think that, when that little switch gets flipped in your brain, that's enlightenment, baby. That is spiritual growth with conditioner if you're talking to that person in the shower. We don't need another TED Talk on unity, okay? We need a collective nervous system nap and maybe a light snack. Because half of humanity's conflict could be solved by low blood sugar management. So next time someone cuts you off in traffic, again, this is something that I have to use every day, just assume they're rushing to save a litter of puppies, or that they have destructive diarrhea. Either way, whichever story you tell yourself, you're going to be a lot less angry. Your cortisol is going to be a lot lower. Win-win situation, right? What if we hit the reset button as a species? What if we tried a collective mantra, if you will, something like this? I don't know yet. Say it out loud. It feels weird, right? Like trying to shake hands with your own insecurities. Yuck. But it's freeing, because saying I don't know yet turns the volume down on your nervous system. It opens the door for learning. It tells your brain, hey, buddy, we're safe enough to be uncertain about something. We can be wrong and still be okay. Imagine social media if everyone had to type, I might be wrong, before posting whatever. The internet would go silent for 3 days while everyone's systems reboot. So back to the societal impact of us living in each other's heads. Just take a look around. It's everywhere. It's everything we're seeing right now in this country. Confusion masquerading around as conviction. A global improv show where no one knows their lines, but everyone's convinced that they're the lead character. It's everybody playing Hamilton, but they've never seen Hamilton. But if we get out of those heads, if we get out of everybody else's heads, and we trade assumption for curiosity, certainty for connection, we might just start to learn who we are together. Messy, funny, flawed, redeemable. Because at the end of the day, nobody's thinking about you, man, as much as you think they are. And that's among the most liberating facts in psychology. So take a breath. Step out of other people's heads. Stop living in other people's brains. There's plenty of room in yours, and you ain't figured yours out yet. All right, let's land this thing because we all got shit to do, right? The world does not need more people who think they know everything. The world needs more people who are brave enough to say, I don't know yet. Because the second you admit that you don't know everything, you've actually started learning something. That's incredible, isn't it? Certainty builds walls. Curiosity builds bridges. And right now, humanity's out here building emotional prisons and wondering why no one visits anymore. But imagine this, a world where people paused before reacting to stuff. Where every, what did you mean by that, replaced 1,000 angry assumptions in our head. Where we stopped scrolling for things to be offended by and started scrolling for things to understand. A world where we actually listened more than we lectured, laughed more than we labeled, and God forbid, asked questions without already knowing the answers. If that sounds impossible, it's not. It literally requires one thing, humility. The kind that says, I could be wrong, and actually mean it. The kind that realizes other people's stories, they don't have to fit inside your outline to be real. The kind that knows you can disagree without demolition. And maybe that's what getting out of each other's head actually means. Stepping back far enough to see that nobody's the villain in their own story. We're all just trying to make sense of this dumpster fire called existence while our brain plays guess who with everyone else's intentions. So before you leave here and go back out into the world diagnosing someone's soul based on a Facebook post or assigning moral worth to a hairstyle or assuming a tone through a text message, just stop. Take a breath. Take a sip of some warm Brazilian coffee. I don't even know what kind of coffee this is. And remember, not every thought your brain serves up deserves a reaction. Some of them just need to pass through, like bad gas. Acknowledge it. Maybe even laugh at it a little bit. But move on. So that's it. We're going to go ahead and call episode 6 right here. Is this episode 6? I don't even know what episode this is on. ADHD. Okay? Thank you for coming back to the Shift Show, my friends. If you laughed, if you learned something, or if you accidentally questioned your existence, all of that's a win. If you haven't checked out the book yet, it's called Welcome to the Shift Show, How to Love Yourself in a World That Won't. And guess what? It teaches you how to love yourself in a world that won't. Check it out if you haven't. Make sure to catch all the new episodes of the Shift Show every week on YouTube, Spotify, Audible, Amazon, and Apple Podcasts. Finally got that sorted out. Follow along on social media at Shift Show Pod. Make sure to like, comment, share, follow, subscribe, all that stuff, all the little buttons, all that self-validating stuff. Man, do something special for yourself this week, man. I'll see you next week. This has been the Shift Show. I am your over-caffeinated host, Adam Blevins. Come on back when the world gets too loud.